Welcome to another episode of Sim Sundays by Gridfinder. This is episode number 38. And once again, Tom and I were separated. It seems like we haven't in weeks been able to do a lot of dual hosting podcasting. So Tom, you didn't get to hang out with Mr. Alex Goldschmidt, which you have before anyways, because we saw him at Sim Racing Expo 2022. You actually did record an episode with him at one point for the Sim Sundays podcast. We got him on again. And, well, it was a really good conversation. The interesting thing about this one is that Alex and I got to spend some time on a plane together. So we kind of have like another level of friendship rather than some of the guests that we've had in the past. When you had the conversation with Alex, did you kind of feel like you already almost knew him more than some of the other guests that we've had on the show?
Yeah, so when we had our interview, I think it was pre-Expo last year, but Alex had commentated on maybe half a dozen of our events. And me and Alex had like a couple of, not meetings as such, but we'd had like a couple of calls just about sim racing and about Gridfinder and stuff that we were doing together. And he was just really keen to know what we were doing. So yeah, it's always nice to start a podcast episode with somebody that you've met in person a few times. I felt the same way with Neville from Vasara last week. So yeah, I'm excited to listen to this one. Wasn't there? I'm excited. I always like hearing Alex's karting stories, so I'm hoping for a few of those.
Well, no spoilers as you are about to listen to it, but he does talk about karting a little bit.
Okay.
So thank everyone for joining us, whether you're watching or listening on your platform of choice, but enjoy the episode with Alex Goldschmidt. We'll see you at the end. So, you've been a busy little bee, haven't you?
Little, big, it doesn't really matter, does it, about size? Because it's all about what you do with the package that counts, Chris.
There you go.
Yeah, yes, it's been absolutely maniacal. I mean, even when we all caught up at the Sim Racing Expo, Chris and I were actually on the same flight back from. Where was it? It was from.
We went.
We went Nuremberg to Frankfurt.
Missed our flight.
Missed our connecting flight, which thank God actually was a bit of a godsend because we'll get onto that in a bit about luggage troubles.
Oh, right.
Yes, for me that was like thank God. And then we ended up waiting an hour, which was pretty nice. It was nice to actually chill out and chat for a change after.
Yeah, the blessing in disguise there was the fact that we got off the plane, we sprinted to the gate, realized we missed it, and then we could kind of just take a deep breath, relax, just have a chill trip at that point, which was kind of nice.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it's always nice when you actually get the opportunity to chill out after a manic 4 days. And manic was understatement of the year when it came to the Sim Racing Expo at Nuremberg last December. Because literally, I'd been, I think, what was it? Monday, I'd just come back from Portimao. Wednesday early morning, it was like drive down to Heathrow, catch 2 flights, and it was just like, oh right, okay. And my body's like going, you're not going to like your sleep pattern for the next few days. And I was like thinking, God help me, just let me sleep on the flight.
Well, so we were at doing Sim Sundays content and things like that, but more in a relaxed fashion because we were there as Gridfinder, but the Sim Sundays podcast wasn't like an official part of the Sim Racing Expo. You were the man on camera, on mic, the entire Sim Racing Expo. How would you say that experience was now that it's all over and behind you and probably looking ahead to 2023's Sim Racing Expo?
Surreal is the first actual superlative I can really put towards that one, Chris, because it was my first ever time as a commentator being part of a LAN event. And doing it at home, you and I both know it's quite nice. You can be comfortable. You're in. You don't need to go far if you need to get a cold beverage or maybe something alcoholic after the broadcast is over. Whereas it's sort of like somewhere like SRE, it was coming in the morning briefing, and then it was about okay, right, look at the timetable, what's going on. And not only was I the lead commentator for the event, which I was actually quite proud to be a part of, it was doing all the VTs, and I still remember going to the exhibitor party on the Saturday night. There was some alcohol consumed.
No, never.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more on that one. Well, some people were in a worse state than me. Let's put it that way on the Sunday, and I managed to do 2 VTs where I probably felt like, you should have still been asleep right about now. I still managed to do 2 VTs that weren't broadcasted, but they went, yeah, we need 5 minutes for the first one. 3 minutes was what I was able to do. And then, yeah, we need another one, 15 minutes, like 8.5. I was like, yeah. Well, time does fly a little bit quicker when you've had a good night out the night before, doesn't it?
Yeah. It seems to, well, it's interesting because when you've had a night like that, when you have to do something coming up soon, it seems like the time goes instantly. But when you're like in the middle of it and you're like kind of exhausted, time slows. It's like this variable rate of time travel. It's very weird. It's interesting.
I was wondering whether, Doc Brown and Marty McFly were going to rock on up in the DeLorean and see Doc Brown coming out going, "Great Scott, Marty!" It's like, Alex, you need to go back in time. It's like, hang on, what?
What is going on here?
What's going on here? What the dickens is happening? But yeah, I mean, coming back to SRE 22, I mean, I was involved with the Road to Sim Racing Expo back in 21. Where the professional trophy was slightly different. It was a single driver event, a 60-minute race, 2 qualifier events, then the best of the best. We then ended up going to the Nürburgring, which that year inevitably was won by the man called James, Mr. Baldwin.
Yeah.
He took the top prize. But then you had the likes of Jardier, George Boothby, and quite a few others competing in that. But yeah, 2022 was a real eye-opener from me. I think just in the scale of what Corvana have managed to be able to do for 2022, take it away from the Nürburgring. And instantly that got up the wind. That got the wind up the sails of the community, going like, "Yeah, but we want to be at the Nürburgring." Hang on, we're in December.
So there's an interesting thing. Tom and I were talking about that because Tom did actually get to go to the Nürburgring one. I did not. I only got to go to 22.
Yeah. So we're both in the same boat with regards that Bunton got the jump on us for 2021, didn't he? The lucky bugger.
Right. And so the conversation that we had was the fact that due to the location of the 2022 SRE, it felt like it was more focused on sim racing. Whereas when it was at Nürburgring, it kind of felt like this mixture of like real car racing, sim racing, whereas like sim racing didn't get the stage that it necessarily deserved when it was at that Nürburgring, just because, we as sim racers are most likely at least a casual fan of motorsport. And when you go to an iconic place like Nürburgring, you're gonna be a little bit like starstruck, if you will, where you're at this amazing venue, this historic place. So it's really nice that we got to go to a place that was it was Sim Racing Expo. Yeah, we had the retro classics attached to it, but that just it was almost like an entry prize where you got to walk through all the really neat cars and see all of that pomp and circumstance, I guess I would say.
True.
And then get into the expo and you're like, wow, this stage is huge. All these vendors, all this stuff going on. It just made for a really focused event, it felt like.
It definitely did, because the thing is, sim racing has always been, I would use the terminology sort of like a sideshow to real life motorsport. But that line has been indefinitely blurred. To
I
such
feel like
an extent.
It's since we're talking about the line, it's almost getting erased at this point, because big manufacturers coming in, recognizing the importance of sim racing and using sim racing to groom drivers to eventually get into their cars is pretty amazing.
Well, that's not been a recent introduction with sim racing. When you have to look at, say, the Rocket F4 program for getting someone an opportunity to race, the Racing Star Rocket program, commentated on by a previous guest, Lewis McGlade, and also Cam Roger. And so the winner of that, Deegan Fairclough, I think has got the opportunity to race in British F4 this year, which is great to hear. GT Academy, the brainchild of certain Mr. Darren Cox, the likes of Lucas Ordóñez, and Jan Marnborough have made successful careers. Jan, most notably, I mean, from a young Welsh boy just on the outskirts of Cardiff, flying over to become a Nissan Works driver and raced in Super GT for a number of years, up until I think it was last season. He also raced in Japanese F4 in the build-up to becoming a full Nismo Works driver. And it was great to see.
It's impressive.
Yeah, it definitely is.
It's an interesting thing that we've talked about this before on the podcast, where sim racing is unique in the gaming space, where the skills that you build up in sim racing directly correlate with the skills that you would need in the actual sport. This is completely the opposite of something like, let's take FIFA, where you're playing football on a pitch with a controller. That is never going to translate to field work when you're out in a stadium somewhere. But in sim racing, you know, the braking knowledge, the cornering knowledge, the overall car control and stuff, yeah, you're going to get G-forces, and it is going to be different to a certain extent. But they do translate pretty well.
They do, but the only biggest differential is the actual feeling of being inside inside the cockpit. You know, when James Baldwin and Jardier just recently had a test in the Alpine A110 GT4, and I think Jardier mentioned about the fact that he was driving it so fast that I think his instructor was sick. But when you think about it, you see people like you know, you look at the two different sides of the coin, and I'll use Jardier and James Baldwin as a perfect example of that. Now, I remember commentating on James Baldwin back in Daytona D-Max. So in real real sense, both James and Jardier have been racing before in real life. So they know what is the major biggest differences between real life racing and sim racing.
Right.
Because as Niels Noyux has a YouTube channel called the Sim Racing Pupilmeter, which is the Pupilmeter is basically the seat of your pants. In other words, it's basically your ass cheeks on the seat, in the words of David Coulthard. But you know, you see a lot of these drivers that are able to use this real world transfer of skills over to the sim racing space and be incredibly competitive. I mean, James has won in British GT. He raced at the Total Energies 24 Hours of Spa, which has now got CrowdStrike as their official title sponsor for 2023. So yeah, I mean, it's great to see that you see so many people that have made the transfer for sim racing and made it actually a lot more easily than people might think, because people are just like saying, yeah, sim racing, you're
just
playing
a video game. Blah,
exactly. It's like, yeah, you're just going around in circles. You're just on your computer at home, and then people when like we had at the Sim Racing Expo, just to actually, when I was not at the commentary position, but seeing the drivers testing in their sim rigs, excuse me, was a real insight. I mean, I know quite a few people like, say, Tinker van der Velde, Dara McCormack, Louis Naza trying to look discreet on Saturday before the ADAC Digital GT500. And I said, where's your Williams gear? He said, it's just so like commentators like you don't find me. And I said, right, you've made yourself a target, Louis. You've made yourself a target, mate. Watch
worse,
out.
Right?
Oh, it's even funnier. It's even funnier. I think one of the funniest moments was Paul Glover from SGP catching Jardier mid-bite whilst having a cookie at at the Veloce stand when we were doing our build-up. And you know, on like, say, an online or remote broadcast, you're talking to these people on the other side of a Discord channel.
Yeah.
But to have it in person was just so cool. And it was just like, I felt like we'd had some real good old Monty Python, you know, like I had like Faulty Towers, Basil Fawlty sort of situations, like when he smacks the front windshield of his Austin Allegro when it refuses to start with a big old tree branch with multiple stalks and leaves on it. It was comedy gold at its best.
You know, Sim Racing Expo, I can't wait until this year. The coolest thing for me, so obviously sim racing, we kind of pride ourselves on how the community is, for the most part, inclusive. You know, when you play some other games, they're a little toxic, but sim racing in general feels like it's a very, very close community that's very open arms to everyone joining. But when you get to Sim Racing Expo, and you start to meet the personalities that you watch on YouTube or you watch on Twitch or, you catch in those major races. And they're just like video game geeks, just like you, that just love sim racing. It's such a cool environment. I'm sure it's the same way for like a Call of Duty event or, League of Legends or something like that. But it's just, if you can make it to Sim Racing Expo, like it almost motivates you even more to be involved in the communities of sim racing, just because it's so open and so fun and so nice. You can walk right up to the Fanatec CEO and just strike up a conversation with him.
Yep. It was great, seeing people such as Thomas Giacomo from Fanatec being there in person with the one-of-a-kind Toro Rosso that now
and
has
he's just strolling around, just
in a
chatting with
hoodie,
everyone.
In a Fanatec hoodie, jeans, and a pair of trainers. I mean, you can't get more casual for a CEO. And then you see Andre from Azatec, like, shirt, suit. It was just like
the Azatec booth was gigantic. They're with their stage and just all the craziness that they went through. We had him on an interview for Sim Racing Expo, and they spent like $250,000 on that stuff.
Well, considering the LMP3 car that they had, they actually fired up.
I know, right in the middle. Speaking of Thomas Giacomo, right in the middle of our interview with Fanatec, they sparked that thing up, and we're like, "Thanks." Like,
yeah, that's the condenser Michael shot to shit, isn't it?
We're just like, come on, guys, right now, come on. It's a really cool event. I can't wait till this year. There's growing pains and things like that. Like, I think you and I had a discussion where we said, it would be nice if the stage was next to more of the exhibitors, kind of in the mix of things, because Sim Racing Expo 22, it was a room for all the brands and exhibitors and things like that, and then another room for all the racing action and the stage and where you were. And it would be very cool to just marry those two together in a little bit more of a cohesive way.
I would think that's just from my understanding. I mean, we're going to have nearly 19,000 square meters. That's more than Nuremberg.
That's insane.
2 dedicated halls. I mean, the good thing is Dortmund is, of course, anyone that knows Borussia Dortmund, the football club. Well, there's going to be lots of other places that people can go to outside for the locality. It's in Nordrhein-Westfalen. And it's in the Ruhrgebiet, which basically within an hour and a half's drive, there are 22 million inhabitants. Oof. You go a total of 3 hours away. That's a total span of over 40 million inhabitants.
Good grief.
So, and the good thing is the Ruhrgebiet is one of the biggest industrial zones within Europe. So you're literally 45 minutes from the Dutch and the Belgian borders. I mean, it's great. It's got so many great international links as well in terms of transport. I mean, I know for a fact that I can fly directly from Stansted to Dortmund this year. So for me, it's going to be like, 45-minute drive to the airport, an hour and 20 in the air. Happy days.
Then you're there.
I think it's great because when I look at it from my perspective as a commentator, you want to be in somewhere where there's going to be a lot of exposure.
Yeah.
And there's been a positive outcome. As soon as SRE made the announcement a couple of weeks back, there was so much positivity that the community's like really getting behind it. A lot of the German sim racing communities are really looking forward to having it on their doorstep, as opposed to like saying, "Oh, damn it, I've got to drive another 3.5 hours by car."
Yeah,
and then you think of everybody like you were coming back over from the US. It's so like. I was just like thinking, have pity on the people that got to travel farther than you. Don't worry, we're all in the same boat. But just think of those that are trying to build up those frequent flyer air miles.
We'll get some of them. Good grief.
Yeah, definitely. If you
can. I think I was in the air for like 14 hours. Overall travel time from my house over to ground on Nuremberg was, I think it was like 26 hours.
And that was including a layover, wasn't it, on the way back, because you stayed overnight, if I remember correctly.
Actually, on the way back, it was like 36 hours because of that overnight stay. It was a long trip because, I mean, well, there's no way around it. It's around the world, so.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, like you were saying at the top of the show, yeah, I have been a busy bee. Karting season's already started. I've been to Spain in mid-February. I've just come back from karting gang, come back there in a month's time, and then over for about 10, 11 days, sort of swanning between Belgium and Germany. So I get a couple of days worth of respite, but sim racing for me has been, well, respite as in I get to sleep in a little bit, but not by much, and then it's back to the grindstone.
Right.
But yeah, no, the sim racing side of things has sort of like gone up. I mean, in terms of commentary, just I mean, this past week, even though I was in Belgium, I still managed to hop on to the past event of round 5 of the MSVT Enduro KA Winter Sim Series, which is backed by you guys. Obviously, Mr. Bunton and Mr. Hopper were in the race.
Yep. I would have hopped on with you, but I was out of town this weekend and I didn't bring any of my portable commentary stuff, so I was unable to. But thanks for jumping in on that. We appreciate it, of course.
Yeah, it was great to work alongside Adam Weller again as well. But yeah, it was a great event. You know, going through into the night at Brands Hatch. Yeah, Tom, I'm going to have to call you out, mate. You need to hit that brake pedal a little bit earlier next time, mate.
It's that series is very cool. We have a couple of things working where we're with the content creator series, and we have some stuff on the back burner, which will eventually be announced here pretty soon. But sim racing big events, obviously with ESL R1, there's so many more what I would call big events rather than just small community things going on, and it's really growing over the course of this last year. It feels like there's a sense of momentum right now that is unparalleled in my eyes from the past.
I think with ESL R1, it was a 50-50 as to how things were going to go. But I think, you know, ESL, Face It Group are a known quantity in esports in general. And when they went, we're going to tie it with Rennsport, with Moritz Herbecker, and we're going to give people a show. That's exactly what we got. And a lot of people asked me, what did you think of it? And I said, well, I was really impressed because, okay, Rennsport is 2 years into its development phase.
Yeah.
Closed beta is set to be released. I mean, the good thing is
they canceled the closed beta temporarily in order to focus on the esports stuff.
I think it was quite a shrewd decision. And the reason for why I say that is that they wanted to get the feedback from the drivers from, like, say, had been at the Rennsport Summit in Munich 7 months previously, and the positivity from the drivers that had helped to accelerate the development of the product was proof in the pudding. I mean, the collision physics I thought were quite impressive. I do have to say, I really felt sorry for when Niles Noyox got turned around at Hockenheim, but it looked like it was actually, but it was the way that there was no damage model. Okay, fair enough.
Sure,
that still's got to be worked on, but the way that there was the slightest touch, Noyox got spun around, and it looked like it was a realistic proposition.
Yeah.
And the drivers were able to go door handle to door handle.
See, that's the important part. Like, how many times have we seen iRacing, ACC, pick any game out there right now where me, even as a commentator, I'm on comms going, I don't know if I'd get that close with the net code we've got in this game. And because at some point you could just all of a sudden be literally colliding, but not on screen. So it was impressive from that point of view. And, you know, I did tweet at one point that, you know, I was a little bummed that they took it away from the beta testers and they focused on the esports event. And then me as a developer, I kind of sat back and I was like, you know what? This is actually kind of a smart idea. The reason being is because when you open something up to the public, or even they're calling it a closed beta, but that's still a lot of people, right? So when you open up a piece of software to that many people at that level of feedback, it's almost white noise and too hard to keep up with. Doing the esports thing, getting a nice condensed collection of drivers that could give you feedback is a better way to go, because you're going to be able to act upon that feedback in a quicker, more targeted manner. I think it was a good idea in the end, but disappointing as a sim racer, of course, because I want the game.
I think the thing is, in this industry, you can't please everybody.
No, absolutely not.
It's so many different things. It can be down to choice of platform. It can be down to choice of commentator that you prefer, because everyone does have their favorites out there.
Oh yeah. I mean, even for ESL R1, there were people that loved the commentary, and then there were people that didn't like the commentary. And I thought the commentary was brilliant. Sure, at times it was a little on the loud side when I was just trying to chill out and watch ESL R1. But that's the commentary style that they went with, and I loved it. I think they did a fabulous job. But there was plenty of feedback, if you want to call it that.
Well, feedback, if it's constructive, is fine. But when it's criticism, that's where the line is
good
drawn.
Distinction.
I mean, I know from my own perspective, having worked, not just in sim racing since, what is it now? We're talking 3 years I've been a sim racing commentator, which is crazy when you think about it.
Right.
But I felt that the tone that George and Lewis had, they swapped. They were taking the starts respectively, so they were switching it between the two. You had the great comedy of James West, Gamer Muscle, who famously was talking to Crimsix, Ian Poulter of all people, whilst he's about to turn a corner mid-race. James, I'm warning you, if you are in a race and someone doorsteps you with the microphone, be prepared. It's Karma from ESL R1 in Katowice.
Oh, serious?
Luke Crane, we all know, he hosted the Sim Racing Expo. Got great time for that guy. And you know what? I think it's quite nice that he's been given the opportunity again to do ESL R1.
Yeah.
Comedy moment, Will Vincent. I feel for the guy. I first met Will at the race spot VCO summit at Simply Race, where I managed to catch up with Florian Hasper, who I've known for over a decade now.
Oh, wow.
Back from the old DTM days.
Okay, nice.
And Will still having the balls to going, if anyone has found Will Vincent's voice, please help me find it. And he was speaking whilst he's got the cue cards up. It was comedy gold, and
it was good.
It was brilliant. I mean, I think the fact was that rather, and this is actually something I have to point out here, that I was actually quite impressed with the format. Very much like, say, how Logitech G Challenge do their broadcasts as well. That rather than saying, filling dead air with twaddle, they've decided saying next race in X amount.
Yeah.
Which I thought was perfect, because it meant that people could actually go, like if you're in a Discord channel, you're doing a watch along, you can have a little chat about it. It's like, yeah, it was great to see Moritz Lerner trying to go side by side with, let's say, Josh Rogers, but poor old Moritz got shoved out there, didn't he? Going into, into Pouon. So it meant that the action was, and the broadcast was as high paced as it should be.
Yeah.
But you had those medial breaks in between, in order for that to happen.
I thought it was a very strong event. And, there was an interesting, I guess I made the interesting comment on Twitter, and I was like, I don't know if I'm excited for ESL R1 or if I'm more excited just to see how Rennsport performs under pressure. Because, we'd come off Daytona, which actually Daytona, other than some of the actions of some of the teams out there, and then R Factor 2, we come off 2 events that didn't really show sim racing off in a incredibly positive light. So for me, I just wanted ESL R1 to essentially go exactly as it did, because I thought it was a very well put together event that represented sim racing in a not only professional but overall good light. It was fun. It was lighthearted enough, but still professional. I can't say it was the perfect sim racing event, because that's hard to say, but it was a damn good one.
It was. And also the fact that ESL were wanting feedback. So they were getting people involved, and over 400 surveys were done on the first day.
Yeah, I like that. That's, instead of just going, oh, let's just duplicate League of Legends, or let's just duplicate Call of Duty events. They're like, no, let's make this event about sim racing for sim racers specifically. Let's find out what they want. Let's find out how we can be the event that matters to them.
Yeah, and there's always going to be people that will ensure that they can give their 2 cents. because everyone, you and I both know, Chris, has got an opinion.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it can be a positive opinion in the form of like, yeah, I really love it, or a positive opinion. Notice how I did not say negative on this, because
Yes.
a positive reception in terms of constructive feedback, saying, I liked it, but maybe you can do this. Maybe if you could tweak it here.
I think you nailed it with your feedback versus criticism comment from a few minutes ago. It really, when it turns into criticism and you're not really offering anything of value to be able to be fixed, you're just criticizing just to be a naysayer, it's no good. But when you're coming to the table with solutions and maybe suggestions because you didn't like something, that's a completely different story. And I prefer that. Of course, I think everyone prefers that. Let's be realistic. But that's how we make successful events, because most of the time people are going to complain about things that they dislike, because it's a lot less likely that someone's going to go and be like, oh, I really like this, that, and this. They're going to be like, they're going to pick that thing that they hated, talk about that a little bit more in depth. That should be because of human nature, right? So I think you really did nail it when it comes to criticism versus feedback. And we really have to find that line for just events in general, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the one of the things that I always like as a commentator is if you see haters sort of like not liking what you do, it's sort of like, it actually spurs me on, because then at least I can sort of take into account what they've said. I mean, a case in point. Now, this is actually to do with the karting that I do. And for those wondering, I still do the Rotax Euro Trophy. I still do the B&L karting series. And I'm now in my 6th season in continental Europe, which is quite crazy when you think about it.
Wow. So you've been doing sim racing for 3 years, and you're 6 seasons in on karting. You've really got that voice trained, don't you?
It has taken a while. I mean, from my perspective, you know, in that first 12 to 18 months, you try and find your own style. You sort of pick from different inspirations and sources. I mean, mine would be Murray Walker, John Hindor, amongst others, Ben Edwards. Got to know Joe Bradley from Radio Le Mans very, very well over the past couple of years. He's a great guy. We always keep in touch, because, funnily enough, for 2022, both John and Joe were watching Campillos, because they had a couple of drivers from the northeast that were racing there, Kai and Reese Hunter, and he said Hindy and I were watching it the whole time, and from that, a natural progressive friendship has occurred, and I got to meet Joe and I got to meet Nick Damon when they were at fullback. I was due to be up somewhere up north, but that got canned on the Sunday. So I thought, well, I'm still going to go to Lincolnshire, which is about 2 and a bit hour drive from my house. And I thought, just make a day out of it. Yeah, I think with any commentator, you will find your voice. For karting, I tend to stand up. So I'm effectively channeling my inner Murray Walker, but also a lot of people say, like, a lot of my friends from school, and I'm talking like 30 years ago, like, we always knew you'd be in motorsport. We didn't realise you'd be a shouty bloke behind the microphone.
A shouty bloke.
A shouty bloke. That's what they called me. But and like they said, it's really cool. And then, like, when I see that most of my friends who are in my age group, you know, they're married, they've got 2 kids, they've got the big house, the SUV for the kids to be ferried to school, and
you know,
it's and they go like, do you
you
enjoy
just described my life
in a nutshell? Sorry, Chris. No, I think it's because of the fact that I wasn't full time in motorsport until the first lockdown. I got made redundant. I was put on furlough for 5 months, and then thought, you know what? If I ain't going to do it now, I'm never going to do it in my life. And here I am now. What are we, March 2023, and I couldn't be happier. I mean, it's great. I've got a supportive family. They really, my mum's always wanting to say, send us the links for the streams so we can watch. And I'm like, and that's really cool. And
any kind of support from people, it's weird because support from people who aren't necessarily in the world of motorsport or in the world of sim racing feels, I don't want to say like more important than the support from the general community, but it feels like, I don't know, they're going out of their way so much to just like do something to help you out, make you happy. It feels special, you know?
Yeah, it definitely does. And it actually keeps you humbled. Keeps both feet on terra firma, because one of the banes of existence as a commentator who travels quite a bit is the traveling.
Oh, yeah.
Like, say for instance, now that I'm in my mid-40s, I'm now having to sort of change how I travel and how I look at that. So sometimes if I'm flying early the following morning, I need to book a hotel the night before, because as much as I love my family, I just want to get a decent night's sleep. And plus,
well,
if you've got younger children in the family, like say my little nephew who's 3, and he'll wake up at like 3 in the morning, and I'll be up bolt upright, whereas I want to be at the airport feeling fully refreshed, still being able to have a power nap on the flight over, depending on how long it is.
Sure.
And then I fly back home, like I'll either travel home or I'll fly back home on the Monday. Because then at least I know, right, okay, I've had time to chill out before the weekend, I've had time to chill out after the weekend.
Right.
Especially with karting weekends, for those wondering, how many races have I done in one weekend on my own before? Le Mans 2021, the Rotax Max Challenge International Trophy, I was shoehorned in as the commentator for the event through one of my good friends, Henry Baudet, unable to attend. I then get a WhatsApp message from the promoter the following day at 10:30. Can we have a chat? Said, I understand you do commentary. Explained who I was. They didn't know who I was from Adam. I did 47 races, plus qualifying, plus the original reason why I was there. I was working with 3 social media clients. So I crammed all that work in. I then get invited by Benoit Perret, who at the time was head of 3MK events, was inviting me to dinner on the Saturday, and I realised that I needed to be at the Eurotunnel or at the ferry at 1:30 Central European time the following day. And I said, I'd love to, but I was shattered. Like, after the podiums had been done, I was like, right, I want to go back to the hotel. I want some pizza. I want a beer.
Yeah.
I want to chill out and get a good night's sleep and pack up, get ready.
Brain fog as a commentator is poison to your experience, because like, if you're not quick with just general comments about whatever's going on, or if you're not quick with some facts about the racing, you just get into that point where you're almost lost in your own words and you're not really doing the race, the viewers, the listeners, whatever it may be, you're not really doing them the full service that you need to be doing. So I completely understand that, needing rest, wanting rest. It's just, you have to be mentally quick and prepared, for sure.
Definitely. You took a look at I showed you my MacBook Pro when we were at Nuremberg, like the amount of information. For those wondering about how prepared I am, I have spreadsheets already prepared in some way, shape, or form for all of the karting events this year I've got. And people might say, I'll only need to prepare a couple of weeks beforehand. No. Preparation is ongoing. It's like the 7 Ps. Piss poor preparation promotes piss poor performance.
Yep.
And the funny thing is, I've got 2 commentary gigs on Saturday, one straight after the other. And at the moment, before recording this podcast, I have been doing the research. What track, what car, who's in what group, what's the timetable, who progresses on to what. So I'm making sure that these spreadsheets I might be given the information, but I want it in a self-digestible format that I understand.
I was actually just going to say that, where, I've been thrown onto commentaries same day, and then they give you a load of information, but it doesn't matter how much information they give you if it's not able to be absorbed by you. So you doing your own spreadsheets and your own formats and your own preparation completely makes sense, because you're sifting through websites, you're sifting through timetables, you're sifting through point structures, and by the time you get through all that, you've absorbed almost nothing. It's just like cramming for a test in university or something like that. You're probably not going to remember 90% of the stuff you went over the night before, but if you were to do it the 2 weeks or a month prior, you would actually absorb that information. So that makes complete sense, that you're putting it in a, like you said, self-digestible, format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for instance, like say for the recent event, I make sure that I know how many races are going on, how many qualifying sessions there are. And what I actually do, and people might say you're a bit OCD on this. Yeah,
Yeah.
but for a very, very good reason. And so, like, I'll have the amount of drivers in each class, what the total is, how many total nationalities we've got,
Mm-hmm.
greatest representation of one particular country in a class, for instance. I'll then have a list of every single nationality, but then I'll have, okay, is this a one-off event? Are there prizes on offer? What's the prizes for whoever wins?
Mm-hmm.
How long is the season over? So I will go on Date Calculator and I will go through every single race weekend and say, okay, so we finish on the Sunday there, we start on the Friday there. How are the amount of dates, including the Friday? So effectively, when I finish for the BNL Karting Series kickoff, I know that there is exactly 34 days until the opening round back at Karting
There you
Inc.
go.
on the 7th of April. So by having that, it's also not just a way of having a self-digestible content pool, but it's also a good way of being able to remember the information because at age 16, my dad said something very, very pertinent to me. He's in the other room, by the way, so he might hear
Okay.
this. He said, you sometimes have the information, the most random information. So there's a lot of shit in your brain. And it's like you remember so much
Okay.
random shit, it's unreasonable. But the thing is, that for me is actually a blessing in disguise because as a commentator, I can remember off the back of my head events that happened. So, say for instance, we're nearly 2 years after the international trophy at Le Mans, and I'm going to name check a particular driver who I'm good friends with, but he's one of the youngest, brightest Belgian talents at the moment in karting. Kai Rillets is 16 years of age, based in Tremelo, not too far from Genk.
Okay.
Well, I remember at the international trophy at Le Mans, Reese Hunter, who had won the senior class and won a ticket to Bahrain for the grand finals that year, basically whispered in my ear at the podium before the podium celebrations got away. He said, "I'm going to get you at the podium celebrations, mate. I've got the champers waiting for you." I said, "Not unless somebody gets you first." And on the podium in karting, there is a tradition from the commentator. If champagne or bubbly is about to be sprayed, there is a running commentary.
Okay.
So Kai won the event and booked his place to Bahrain for juniors that year. So I had prepped. I was wearing my event t-shirt, my cargo shorts, my trainers, my ACO radio on the back of my belt, no smartphone, no wallet, no keys, nothing in my pockets whatsoever. And so I take the mickey out of him straight away because he's the last one to pop the cork on the podium, isn't he? And then he guns straight for me. And as I turn around, he sprayed me all up the back. And I went to him, "You remember how all I'm going to say is, Mr. Rillets," and I looked at his mum when I said this. His mum, Christy, lovely lady, really, really good person. Get on so well with her. And I said to him, "Just remember, there can be a bit of karma when a commentator never forgets." And I said,
Oh, there you
"Who
go.
was the one getting told off after we had the red flag after 2 full starts for the final?" "Oh, it was you," like that. And his mum was bent over double with laughter.
That's fabulous.
And she came over to me and she said, "It's so nice when we have someone like you as a karting commentator because you can just remember these certain little things."
Well, those side information or ancillary information, however you want to say it, all that extra info.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've experienced races where there's just nothing happening in the race. You're like, yeah, they're turning corners and they're continuing on. You have to fill it with something, and having all of that extra information just gives you something to fall back on when the race is kind of dull.
I mean, in karting, it's quite easy to do that. Very different to sim racing, I might add. And the reason being is that I tend to get to a race weekend on a Thursday around about lunchtime. And then it's like, say hi to the crew, hope, hugs, handshakes, whatever. Set my stuff up in my commentary position for the weekend. And then they go, "Oh, can you do this?" I said, No. I'll be back in 2 hours. Why? I've got my paddock walk to do. And if I don't do my paddock walk, it does not set me up well for the weekend.
Sure.
Because you want to catch up with people. You want to say, like, "What's all this crap you've been posting on social media?" So like, and then they go, "Oh yeah, that." don't ask. It's sort of like don't ask, don't tell situation. But then
Right.
and then it's also sometimes like say the B&L karting series we're changing our social media strategy for 2023. You know, we set up a new Instagram account, we set up TikTok as well, looking at YouTube Shorts. All the actions broadcasted on the B&L karting series YouTube channel. So we're thereby just trying to expand our organic outreach, as any championship would do. But
Yeah, of course.
it's quite funny. Like, say, sometimes the Thursday could be, yeah, you've got to sort out interviews. And then it's like pulling teeth. You're trying to find the people and they're not there. Or they haven't shown up yet because they're doing something else.
Yeah.
But then at least during the interviews, it's so funny, like asking certain questions, and then you get a raft of answers where everyone said like, "Yeah, sushi's my favorite food." There's one particular person who I am going to name check for very good reason because he's not fulfilled on his promise from last weekend. Casper Shawman said, I said, so what do you do? Do you got any superstitions? I do my happy dance. I said, well, if you win this weekend, you're doing your happy dance on the podium.
There you go.
And then we got onto the talk of favorite food. He was one of 3 people that said the word sushi.
You know what? This is funny that you mentioned this because ESLR1 had a segment where it was a cutaway segment where they interviewed the drivers. And it made me laugh so much, but the reason is different than you would probably think. It wasn't that the drivers were necessarily funny, but it was they'd ask the question and it would be one word from the driver. Like,
Yes.
that's it. And just like, no, they're sitting in the chair and they're like, sushi. And they're like, what's your favorite track? Nürburgring. Like, it was so dry and so like that the person behind the camera, the director of photography or the producer, whatever, was going like, oh, we're going to get this really cool interview with the drivers, show the personality of the drivers. And they were just like one word answers for everything, just kind of like meh, the whole way through. I was rolling laughing because I knew what the guy behind the camera was going, can I get a little bit more, like, give me something.
It's just like, what on earth are you doing? I've asked you an open-ended question. You give me a one-word answer.
Just one word. Just like, come on.
Uno mas.
Like, show the people out there your personality a little bit. Like,
the thing is that if you put a driver in front of a camera, the first thing they're going to do is cat in the headlights.
Oh, yeah.
Unless they're not unless they know what they're doing in front of it, and they don't mind being, like, if they're doing like Instagram lives or TikToks or whatever, where they're actually talking to camera, then you know that the confidence is there. Whereas if it's someone who's on social media but not on, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, like they're there because they have to be almost, and those are the dry ones. And you know what's kind of interesting as well? Because ESLR1 was probably a much larger production than any of those drivers were used to, even if they're streamers and they're used to sitting in their nice sim rig, cameras up, they're talking to their fans and talking to their community, and they're perfectly reasonable and, expressive in that environment. When you get put in a room in front of a big old light rig with a commercial level camera in front of you, a producer with a clipboard standing there, like reading you the questions, all of a sudden you're like, wait, this got really real really fast. And then even the most comfortable streamers out there could clam up like that. So it was so funny to me to watch it happen, because I was like, they probably expected these people to, like, all kinds of personality comes out, because when they're with their teams, they're laughing, they're having fun. Exactly. And then they get on camera and the producer's like, what are you doing? Like, give me more.
I mean, the good thing with the B&L karting series, I basically said to the people, right, okay, introduce yourself in the following way: your name, class you're racing in, and driver number. And we had one driver who forgot their race number completely. We had another driver that mixed his driver number around.
That's actually kind of good, though.
No, but the way that he responded to it, because I knew the driver number, which is even funnier. He goes, "Hi, my name's so-and-so. I'm running in Rotax Senior." Oh shit, what's my race number? And I went, 321. And he went, I said, do it again. But then Casper Shawman, who I mentioned earlier, it was so funny. He was dropping the F-bomb like it was going out of fashion. And so we've just gone like, right, okay, just into the microphone, just go beep. So like literally when you drop that, we'll put the beep instead.
Right.
And he was just like, he was holding the lapel. He was a cheeky little bugger as well. He was going like beep, 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 and it was just comedy gold.
That's fabulous.
And then the funny thing was, one of the questions that we were asking was screen time. Have a guess which person had the highest average screen time out of everybody.
I would not be able to guess that. I know I spend way too much of my life looking at screens, but yeah, I wouldn't even be able to hazard a guess on that one.
It was me.
It was you.
It was me.
It was you. Well,
15 average of 15 hours a day.
Well,
but the thing is that when you think about it, when we're having a chat, I'm having to deal with some, yourself who's 5 hours behind me.
Yeah,
I've got people over in Australia Australia and New Zealand I keep in touch with on a regular basis, so I've got to factor in that time scale.
Well, here's an interesting question then. Are you counting all screen time, or are you counting mindless, I'm just wasting time on screen? Because I wouldn't necessarily count like work time on screens as screen time. It's when you're scrolling through TikTok or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts or something. That's like that useless screen time.
Well, I think the thing is, the majority of the stuff that I tend to do is on Discord. I have been watching a lot of Ewan McGregor and Charlie Boorman on Long Way Round, Long Way Up, Long Way Down on Apple TV. Because considering with the new iPhone 14, I've got Apple TV Plus free for 3 months.
So you may as well take advantage of it while you have it, of course.
Yeah. You know what's even
Ted
funny?
Lasso. Watch Ted Lasso.
I have watched season 1. I could not stop laughing.
I love that show so much.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite shows. It's just a feel-good show, but it actually like handles real issues in the feel-goodness of the show. It's so great. It's such a well-written show.
Yeah, I think realistically, we all have smartphones nowadays.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of screen time when I, consider when you look at it from a stream perspective, like say the karting, because not only am I commentating, I'm doing social media, I'm also writing the reports at the end of the day. I'm effectively the lead producer for the show as well. So I'll come up with an intro idea and all that kind of stuff. It's there's a lot of times when you're and as I say that, emails come through. Two emails have just come through.
Yeah.
The phone's just gone off.
Constant.
Well, at least the good thing is this today has been a sort of like a recharge day, and it's nice to actually do something different.
Nice,
like talking with yourself, of course. But yeah, I think it's just the fact that you are contactable by so many different ways. iMessage, text message, SMS, WhatsApp, Discord, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, every single social media platform that people are on. I mean, it's...
Well, you'll get an email, and then that person who emailed you will text you and be like, "Did you get my email?" And you're like,
"Yes." And then you get the Facebook message, and then the Instagram DM is a direct. It's like
you're like, let me figure out like my day.
So like hang on to it, and that's only like 10 minutes. You're like, what the f?
Yeah,
like big F.
You've
in
contacted
chat.
me 4 different ways in 5 minutes. What are you doing? Stop.
It's like, has someone got their ants in their pants? They obviously have with this person.
Good grief!
It's just like you sort of think, hang on, just because. And there's one thing that is a big pet hate of mine. I think I might have told you about this. Is that when you phone somebody, and when I mean actually phone somebody, is like, pick up the phone and call them.
Right.
And then they go, they still have the audacity to WhatsApp you back. They go like, "Oh, I'm really, really busy at the moment." So like, hang on, I've just phoned you, and you've got the audacity to send me a WhatsApp message back saying,
"You know what? I've gone the opposite way of that."
Have you?
So instead of calling people and then not getting them, I will text them first and be like, "Hey, do you have a minute for a call?"
Yeah.
And then if they don't respond, I'm like, "Okay, well, then a call would have been useless," And then they'll let me know like later on, "Oh, I'm available now. Give me a call now." And then, you'll ring them up. But I've actually defaulted to texting first or messaging if maybe it's a contact on Discord like you. I think we've done that a couple times where we're like, "Hey, do you have some time later?"
Yeah.
So I find that to be a less invasive way because I don't know what it is about the phone ringing, but I don't want it to anymore. Like, Like, I just don't like when the phone rings. I'm like, oh god, what is it?
Like I'm sort of like, both myself and Chris, we're in the same age bracket anyway, but
Mhm.
with certain people, I know that it's nice to actually give them the common courtesy. With some people, it's sort of like, right, this person is getting a call, and I don't care
Yeah.
whatever happens. And then at least I know that with some of my friends, I can do that. With some people, it is a case of just sort of having to preempt, like, yeah, can we have a call later on?
Yeah. Well,
And
in
they'll
our
go,
case, it's just because the massive time difference. It's hard to figure
yeah,
out the connection times because you're in the evening and I'm still working, or whatever may be happening
yeah.
at the time.
Yeah,
So
exactly. It's always a case of sometimes when it's different time zones, then that's where your kind of default is what my modus operandi is.
yeah.
But then it's like everyone is a lot of people that I know that we know in the sim racing space predominantly use Discord anyway.
Oh yeah.
So it's one of one and 500 of the other, so to speak.
So switching gears back to sim racing again,
Yeah.
you don't really sim race at all, do you?
Well, as you can see, I have limited
You do have
availability of
limited
I do have
foot
very
space.
limited
Yeah.
availability of I'll still like say Simply Racing Milton Keynes, which is
Mhm.
part owned by Mike Yao.
Yep.
I will go there and I will have a blast. I think the thing is, if people were to say to me, "What's my favorite platform to commentate on?" ACC.
Okay. Really interesting.
But out of all the platforms I was actually one of the competitors at the RaceSpot VCO Summit broadcast, but I only opted for the GT4 when you got you had like Josh Rogers and quite a few other of the aliens out there.
Yeah.
This is like, I'm not getting a cup car. No way. I will not know which way to turn or whatever. So I thought GT4 would be
Okay.
a bit more straightforward, which it was. And once I had learned the subtle nuances of how to change down in a GT4 car on
Sure.
iRacing. But predominantly, my main experience with regards to sim racing has been R Factor 2.
Okay. I hear a lot of people loving R Factor 2. I have it because I have all of them because they go on sale and you're like, oh, it's $5. Yes, I will buy that. So
Yeah.
I have all of them, but I always lean into iRacing the most. Well, A, because I paid for the membership, so I better get my money's worth, right?
Definitely.
And I'm the kind of guy who likes variety in my sim racing. I don't like to just race GT cars, or I don't like to just race open wheel. I like to, in one single night, I race 4 different series in iRacing throughout the evening, just because I want to slide around the corners in some rallycross. I want to try to get the best time in my GT cars. I want to do some open wheel just because they're so dang fast, or even the ovals are fun because then you really have to get the nuances of braking and cornering and all that stuff. So ACC doesn't really gain my attention as much as it should just for that, because I just get bored with the GT cars after a while. R Factor 2, I literally bought it and I've just never set it up because you find the game that kind of, I guess, fulfills all your sim racing needs, which is iRacing in my instance. And you just you stick with it. You have your setups, you have your buttons mapped, you have everything all configured for your computer. It's as fast as you can start it up, get racing, rather than worrying about fidgeting with some other things,
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I mean, I do enjoy racing on R Factor 2. I mean, it's
Mhm.
mainly been to like get-togethers or like Christmas parties and that kind of stuff, where
Sure.
it's just about just banter and giggles and just having a blast and just enjoying good company, and that's why there are facilities like Simply Race around. I mean, I
I'm so
also
jealous. So jealous that you guys have those kind of places. I would love to open up a place like that around me. I just don't think it would be profitable and have the appropriate audience to keep the doors open.
it's always down to catchment area, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it would work well in places like Miami, Vegas, some of the big cities around, but ultimately speaking, those are too far away from me anyways, because the United States is gigantic. But it would be so amazing
Huge.
to be able to go, get in the car, drive to a place where all sim racers gather, rather than, because, you know, I do enjoy sitting at my home on my rig and, you know, talking with people through Discord and stuff. That's fun. But there's a different thing. And this is actually probably why we love Sim Racing Expo so much as well. It's different when you're standing next to the person and just talking. You're talking about the exact same stuff, but you're talking person to person, face to face. You get all the mannerisms. You get all the just the physical, social aspects of those things.
Yeah, definitely, because you can. I always find that sometimes when you're on a phone call or you're on a Discord audio call or whatever, Teams, you know, when you're not seeing the other subject in front of you, it's, you know, do say that 70% of conversation is about body language.
Oh yeah,
that is quite crucial. That's very, very crucial. But where if you're not on the video on Discord, or like we are now at the moment here on Grid Finder, is that you're not getting a full set of nuances when it comes to what the other person's trying to describe. Or, you know, tone is one thing. It's even worse when it gets to WhatsApp and Discord messaging.
Oh yeah, text messaging is the worst. So many things get lost in translation there. And it's funny because there's a bunch of TikToks and YouTube shorts of people on the opposite side of text messages saying things but reading them completely different, and it's just hilarious because we've all experienced it.
Oh yes, emails as well.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, when you get to that point with the latter three platforms that we mentioned, it's the kind of the understanding profile of how far away do you need to be from a baseball to swing and miss.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's also an interesting fact. So you and I have actually been in person together.
Yes.
And talked. So when you and I are messaging, I have a better understanding of what your text messages are coming through, because like in my mind I can kind of hear and see you saying those things, where if it's someone that you've never actually physically been in the same vicinity of, you're going to have a really difficult time interpreting what they're saying, because now you're just taking it as literal, really.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I 100% agree on that one, Chris, because once you've got to know that individual, and even though it might be over the course of a weekend, but you understand what their thought process is like. You can sort of say, yeah, I can feel Alex's cogs in his brain sort of turning around a little bit and clicking into place. That's, you know, when you get on really, really well with someone who becomes a good buddy, good friend, good acquaintance, you can then understand how each other operates. And okay, yes, there might be differences in terms of lost in translation, where the person might not be, you know, it might not be their mother tongue, but they'll still have that understanding.
Right.
I wonder how Alex would say this. And it does systematically work. But when you haven't talked with people, but it was like great to meet so many people like Jardier, like George Boothby, Eamon Murphy, Mira Schmidt.
Jardier had, I knew that guy was going to have a lot of energy because I watch his streams, but in person, his energy is like, it's infectious energy.
It is.
He's such a fun guy to be around, and so just infectiously happy. That guy was very cool to meet. I was very satisfied with our chance encounters when we were at Sim Racing Expo.
The man who is the most positive entity in sim racing, hands down. And
yeah, it was so crazy.
It was so funny that, like, most of the time people have said, yeah, I've seen him sitting in sim rig. And then I go walk up to him and I get the bloody Richard Hammond complex from the Grand Tour, don't I? I need like a beer bottle crate underneath my feet, so I'm actually eye level with him.
So you don't look like you're a foot shorter yet. He's a tall guy.
He is. I mean, he must be what 6'2", 6'3".
That's funny. From now on, anytime I feel short, I'm going to call it the Richard Hammond complex.
Mate, I use it all the time and it works.
I love it.
It's great because people just go, "Oh, I didn't realise you were that short." I go, "Yeah, I'm a bit of a short ass, aren't I?" But hey, look, I'm here.
That's why cameras, the magic of cameras. We can make ourselves seem as tall as we want. What's funny about that statement? I had been on video calls with Tom from Grid Finder hundreds of times.
Yes.
When I saw him at the Nuremberg airport, I was like, "Holy crap, you're way taller than I thought." He's towering over me too, because I'm only 5'10".
Yeah,
and he's like I think he's like 6'2" or something like that, and that's quite a big difference. When you, for some reason, I was just expecting it like to be same height as me, and I have no idea why.
It's quite funny that, when on a call like this, we both look the same. We know that we're both the same height anyway,
Yeah.
so that's not a problem. It's when you see other people and you just like think,
You're like, what the-
it should be about the same height, and then you look and you go, Jesus Christ.
Why are you towering over me? What?
Or as I like to, like to say about one complex to another, like you and I have got the Richard Hammond complex, then everyone else has got the Jack and the Beanstalk complex.
Right.
It's just like
Right.
6'2", 6'5". You're like, damn,
So-
what have they been feeding you?
So what we're saying is, if you're wondering how tall some of these sim racing personalities are, go to Sim Racing Expo and find out how many of them are freaking tall. There's a lot of tall people in sim racing, and I don't get it.
In other
I'm like
words,
the shortest guy ever.
In other words, bring your stilts just in
Right,
case.
bring your stilts, the platform shoes, just so you
Oh
don't have
my
the
god! It'd be like
Richard Hammond.
It'd be like going back to the 1970s again, wouldn't it? Like with
Oh,
the bell
man.
bottoms and the
And the platform shoes. Yeah. Well, Alex, we're about an hour in. What do you have going on in the world of sim racing that some people can hear your wonderful voice or see you on the, I guess do we say on the TV anymore? On stream, I guess we would say nowadays?
On screen, I think probably we
Yeah.
could use as a generic.
Yeah, on screen, that makes sense. So
on
where can
screen.
people catch you in the next couple of weeks? What do you got going on, man?
Okay, right. Let me refer to my gospel that is my calendar.
The trusty, just rack up the screen time here.
Rack up the screen time again. But hey, it's work related,
it's
folks.
Work screen time, so it doesn't count.
Well, I've just come back from the B&L karting series. I mean, over the next couple of months, going to be quite busy. I've got the FTR event Sim 3D GT series, rounds 4 and 5 at Belle Isle this weekend, the home of the original Detroit Grand Prix. Got something also planned that same day, but I've yet to confirm it. Also sim racing. Back to karting again at the turn of the month. And then, I've then got, as I said, 11 days in Belgium and Germany. Plenty of sim racing still to come. Just waiting on a few things to firm up. But yeah, karting, sim racing.
Beautiful. Well, maybe one of these days you and I can actually get in the comms booth together and see how that goes. I'm still trying to find my voice a little bit, whether it's an ultra exciting voice or, I'm not really sure where I'm kind of going. I'm just letting it progress naturally at this point. I have about 10 gigs under my belt and I have 27 booked for this year. So it's going to be a big one.
I hate to think how many sim racing gigs I'm probably going to have this year. I'm probably going to be in the hundreds or something like that.
You'll at least add a 120 something to my number, but this is my first year in it, so we'll see.
I mean, the thing is that you ended up working with a very good friend from Scotland, Mr. David Christie, for the final round of the for the WSL GT3 series that was run by IMB Racewear.
Yep, had my first commentator's curse. Poor guy,
Oh yes, because I remember seeing. Yeah,
it had to happen, I guess.
Well, I mean, now Lewis McGlade, I have to say something about a particular phrase that was mentioned on the recent VCO ERWC number 2 about the commentator's curse.
Oh.
I'm actually in agreement with Lewis because I don't think it exists. It's just a fate of circumstance that it just tends to happen.
Okay.
So
it does feel like it exists because you're literally talking about the person on screen. They spin out and you're like, oh.
But it is circumstance. It can happen. It's happened to me a bunch of times in the past, but I go like, you put the commentator's curse on me. Sorry, what's that when it's at home? So I completely sideswipe it underneath the carpet.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, it's cool, and also the fact that one of the nice things I think about last year, I was also another sim racing commentator that got an award through Downforce Radio.
Oh yeah,
for the commentator of the year award for
congratulations,
for
by the way. That's very cool.
I'm not one for awards, but considering the fact that I'd made so much progression in terms of sim racing and also being the voice of European road tax, I put so much hard work and passion and effort into this. That I started in 2011 in motorsport, and it was sleepless nights. It was working a full time 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 if you're
That's
in the
the hard stuff when you're first getting into like the new hobbies or the new adventures, and you have to work the job that you've lost passion for the job you're working enough to try to push for something else. So you have to work it and then push for that other thing, and it's a very difficult time.
Especially when the fact of when people like saying, "So what's the real office?"
Oh,
And I go, "Well, I'm about to head to that one today, my friend."
yeah.
You know.
Well, Alex, what is your most active social platform that people can follow you on to find out what you're up to?
Right. Okay. Again, screen time. Screen time. You this is going to be like a recurring theme now. You're going to have to ask people what their respective average
Every couple
screen
of weeks, I'll
times
just
are.
message you on Discord. So, what's your screen time been?
And then I'll just do like a screenshot glow. Bing, there it is. Well, Twitter and Instagram are my two most used platforms. So at a Goldschmidt 77,
Mhm.
and then Instagram at Alex Goldschmidt 77. And for those wondering, am I a Valtteri Bottas fan? No, it's the last two digits of my year of birth.
Yeah, I knew that only from talking prior, but yeah, I guess that would be a Bottas and Emmer as well. But
Yeah,
okay, Alex, I appreciate you being on the show, man. This was a lot of fun, and like I said, hopefully we can get in the comms booth together at some point, and then hopefully Sim Racing Expo really pans out to be as fun, if not much more fun than the 2022 one that we had.
definitely. I really appreciate being back on the show as well, Chris, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, Alex. Thanks a lot. Welcome back, guys. And that was a very, very fun conversation for me. You know, like I said in the intro, it was interesting because it just feels like a conversation with a friend. You know, I know all of these guests that we have on Sim Sundays, really, the conversation goes so smoothly just because we're all so passionate about sim racing. But there is that next level thing when you talk to someone who you've physically met in person, had long conversations with, you know?
Yeah, I enjoyed that one. It was interesting to get Alex's impression of some of the esports events because he's physically at a lot of them. So it does make a difference. And yeah, it was interesting hearing his thoughts on Expo last year and how that could be improved. And obviously then his thoughts on Le Mans Virtual and Rennsport, to get the impressions of someone who does this all the time for a living and in like different spheres. So like karting as well as sim racing. Yeah, it's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, the interesting thing with Alex is since he's in the real world karting scene so deeply, and then he's also so deeply ingrained in the sim racing world. It's just really interesting to see someone like him, and you know, he's not really comparing in them at all. He's just, they're two separate events that kind of have a lot of similarities together, and it's really, I don't know, it's nice to see that we're not trying to compare sim racing to real life motorsport as much, you know?
Yeah, I enjoyed that one a lot. So thank you, Alex.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex. If you're looking for Alex online, just search Alex Goldschmidt. He's all over the place, just as he said. But if you are looking for a sim racing league, we make this little product called Grid Finder out there. Go to gridfinder.com. We have thousands and thousands of leagues for you to search through just to find that perfect league for you to race Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whenever you're available.
What about Thursday?
There's someone out there.
Can I race Thursdays? Thursdays? Can I race Thursdays?
Yeah, no, we don't have any leagues on Thursdays. I'm sorry. No,
that's
we
a deal breaker for me.
Any day of the week, we're out there and there's leagues for you. But if you are a league owner and you're looking to fill some of those grids, go ahead and also list your league on Grid Finder and, you know, get some drivers applying to you. Fill those grids so that you have full grids and even some reserve drivers when people can't make it. Lots and lots of traffic out there on Grid Finder. Lots of communities that have grown quite a bit from being listed on our site. Anyway, we'd like to also thank the episode sponsor, Trak Racer. As always, you know, Tom gets to race in the office in his Trak Racer rig that was provided by them when we were doing the races on Sunday evenings. But if you're looking to upgrade your rig at all, go to trakracer.com. Find out, you know, what they have to offer. They got stuff from stands, full rigs, all kinds of great stuff. And even pretty soon, peripherals coming. Pretty excited about that one.
I know, right? Very exciting.
Thank you for watching or listening, whatever your platform of choice may have been. Tom, do you have any last words for our listeners and viewers?
Nope. Well, I always do this. I always say no and then say something. I'm going to do that again this time because next week I am incredibly excited about. I guess I don't know. Do we? Is it worth? Basically, this is a guy who invented a very cool pedal that made a big splash at the expo. That's all I'm going to say.
Due to the fact that there's only one new, I guess there's a couple new pedals out there, but this one did make a splash.
Well, there was two that made a splash. I think this one, perhaps more of a splash.
Right, because of the feedback.
The things
that people have. Anyway, next week it will be a very great episode as well. So thank you again for listening and watching. We'll see you next Sunday.
See you later.